Bringing you another video brought to you by Exmark, and I want to talk about habitat, and actually we'll talk about it here on my farm. But anytime that you're managing habitat, that means you're looking after several different things. If you manage the timber, the grasses, and in a lot of cases you can actually plant different grasses, in this case food plots. But through managing the timber and the soil and the habitat and the natural habitat right, it's also going to help in the wildlife. So manage one correct, and it actually have big benefits to the wildlife. So we'll just ride through and I'll show you some of the things we've done over the years since we bought this farm in 2015 to really change it for the good. Here's one cool thing we did in this food plot right here. This is probably one of my favorite food plots that we hunt. If you look, you can see a redneck blind sitting right there. Obviously that's a rifle blind. Depending on how we want to manipulate it, we could put some good cover in here or some good food plot material for a bow blind. But notice right here where we took the edge of this food plot and we drilled some big giant milo. This is made by Backwoods Attractant, some seed that we planted. So it accomplishes two things. Not only is it great habitat, because you notice these big heads of milo, they actually produce seed, and so that's great for the wild birds, the turkeys, the quail, everything can eat these. And when they dry out, the deer will come back and eat it. This is a different variety which grows really tall, but it also provides a lot of cover. If you get down to that tree stand, once you come off the ladder, it shields you to exit and not really spook the deer out here in the field. So this is really cool. Far as creating some better habitat, but it accomplishes two things. Creates good habitat, but it gives you that shield to get out of the stand. And notice on this edge, same thing. I planted some nice grain sorghum. I'll leave this out all year. We won't do anything with this grain sorghum. We'll just leave it. If you're looking for good habitat for turkeys, unbelievable. This seed provides a lot of food for them, and it also provides cover. So the deer like to bed in the edges of this. It's just really cool. And then obviously in the middle here, we bush hog this, and this will all go into buck forage oats and white clover or some type of arrowleaf clover. I'm a firm believer in oats, the forage oats, and I'm also a big believer, and I love the clovers. So if I just got one thing to plant or two things to plant, it is absolutely clover and some type of forage oats. The deer love it. I got plenty of trees in here that I can use the same habitat that we're planting, and I can come in and hunt deer based on different winds. So it gives me an opportunity to have a kind of a strategic place to hunt based on also creating some habitat that makes it easier and better to hunt. Here's another thing that we've done naturally. This too is some pecan orchard left over, but what I did is I let about 20 acres of this orchard grow up. I do maintain it about every 2 years. I'll come in and I'll cut it, but I've let this grow up right here. You'll notice that it's high, and you'll even notice little subtle things that I did. You notice there's a big brush pile right there. Those are limbs that fell out of these trees. I've took a grappler and I placed them there, and I've created a windrow or brush pile. So if you're looking at it, you might think, well, that ain't as pretty as you would want to see. You could clean that up and make it look better. I could also bush hog this and keep it clean, but this is premium habitat. This is great brooding ground for the turkeys. It's great nesting areas. Obviously, if you have quail, if you have rabbits, those brush piles make great places for them to hide, for them to make nests and hide from predators, both up in the sky and on the ground, like your nest predators, as well as your coyotes or foxes. In this case, I purposely leave brush piles. I actually create brush piles. And so the cool thing about it, if you get tired of it and it becomes an eyesore, man, it makes for a great cold day, bonfire with your kids and family to build some s'mores on. But this is a part that I'm really proud of, because we have come in and this could be mowed down and really pristine, but instead we let it grow up to a certain height because it creates good cover, good bedding for the deer. The brush piles will give good nesting, good brooding out here. All the birds can come in there, and there's plenty of bugs that it creates. So habitat is crucial, and if you manage the habitat, it's only gonna make your wildlife better. So it goes hand in hand, and it's a lot of fun, man. It's a heck of a responsibility. It's a lot of fun to see it unfolding right before your very eyes. I come through here this past May, and there was a large flock of turkeys out here bugging, chasing grasshoppers, and I was like, heck yeah, man, I'm glad I let that grow up. Here's another cool thing, talking about habitat that's very subtle, that a lot of times farmers will take out all windrows. But notice right here, this was no property line, so there was no barbed wire fence that went through here. I've let this grow up and left a windrow or a shelter belt, some people call it out in the Midwest. And what that creates, you can see that there's a lot of muscadines that's growing wild in there. There's a lot of cool wild native browse that comes in here. Those muscadines are great to eat. We'll come down here with the kids and you can see they're loaded now. They're not ripe yet, but actually it's amazing of what you can pull out and eat yourself. But it also creates a lot of food for the deer, the turkeys, and the wildlife again. And notice once again, as it grows up and limbs fall in there, it gets gnarly and nasty, makes great places for these turkeys to nest. It makes great places for rabbits to come in and hide from predators. So sometimes the most pristine and well manicured place actually cannot be the best for habitat when it comes to the wildlife. In this case, these windrows are really crucial, especially for the flocks. You know, birds, quails, they really thrive and they use a lot of the windrows because there's just a lot of cover. Rabbits and things like that. If you get an open field and you get a predator from the sky and or a predator on the ground, they can just easily come in and eat anything anytime they want. They don't even have to work for it. But these windrows at least give them enough cover to protect themselves a lot better. Here's a place on my farm that kind of goes into a timber change. And anytime you start talking about timber in the South, that is a crop in itself, especially in the southern states, Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, really all over the Southeast, where, you know, in the Midwest, people think of crops, you know, as corn, soybeans, milo, any type of grain or wheat. But in this case, timber and timber management, not only is the timber itself a crop that you can come in and select cut, clear cut, and do a lot of different things. There's a lot of misinterpretation when people talk about a clear cut to think that, well, that is completely just, you know, pillaging and taking so much from the land. But in reality, there is a price that people will pay for this timber, so it becomes pretty cool when it comes to a financial payment that you might get. But also in the South, we replant as soon as we take it. So even as a clear cut, it creates a whole different type of habitat and cover and wild food and forage for the wildlife. So as the new timber is growing, it creates a whole nother habitat or change in the environment, which becomes a very crucial, important part of your habitat. So just because people actually cut these trees and take them to the sawmill does not mean that it takes away from the property. If done right, it actually can add back to it. And obviously you're not cutting the whole place. You know, you spot cut it, you select cut it, you only clear cut certain sections. So what happens is it gives you a big diversity in your timber management and for your wildlife to thrive in a lot of different areas. Here we get up into some nice loblolly pines, and I'll get out and I'll show you these. Here is a cool little section to show you a really well managed timber habitat. This is an area that we have burned. If you look on some of the other Exmark videos that we've done for exmark.com/backyard, you will find a lot of other cool segments where we did on the benefits of controlled burning. This is just one of those areas. But as it pertains to habitat, you can see all this native grass. A lot of your Georgia grasses or southern grasses are coming back. Once again, great habitat for deer to bed in. There's a lot of different plant species that's been underneath this top layer of pine straw and stuff. Once it's burned out, those seeds germinate, so you get a lot of different variable, you know, feed that they can feed on. But also, it really helps this timber because it thins out all these sweet gums, and little poplar trees, and other little small, you know, little seedling pines, and it burns them back. So this is a perfect situation to where this timber in this little section here has been managed properly to create better habitat, but also better timber. Just a really cool renewable resource that you can create some money, create good habitat, helps the wildlife, and these trees obviously become an important part of your property because it becomes a crop, but also you cannot build a house unless you got 2x4s and 2x6s and 2x12s. And that's what we're doing down here in the South and really all across the country. So properties like mine, even though it's private, man, you take care of it, you keep creating better habitat for the wildlife, you manage the timber properly, and it all takes care of you, whether it's from field to table, whether it's a little financial gain in these crops and these trees. In my case, when I bought this property, it had some built-in pecan orchard in it, so it gave me an opportunity to come in and manage that. to try to make that a potential financial income. But it's so cool when it all works in unison and you get good weather and rain and all the proper, you know, seasons. Man, it just makes you happy. You go to bed knowing that this is way better than it was when I bought it, or if you've got a place that you're getting a chance to do it, you actually leaving this better than what you found it. And that makes you feel good when it comes to being a steward of the wildlife and a steward of the environment. So just when you thought the video was over, one more little bonus tip on habitat, and I can't take credit for this. My buddy Tim Wells actually told me about this. So if you buy any kind of feed, or you even have a collection of pallets around your house, man, these pallets, old wood pallets, make great habitat for putting them and stacking them too high. And for the rabbits and things and cottontails, they can go in there and they can hide, they can nest in there. They love to get in some type of confined area like the old rabbit boxes you used to hear about. But take 2 pallets, put them on top of each other. If you make it even better, cut some limbs and put on top of it. Protects them real good. You see how it's grown in with these grasses. Great habitat. If you're worried about what it looks like, man, that is not treated wood. Just in a couple years, it'll rot into the ground and decay. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust is what it becomes. So termites will start eating it pretty quick. But in the interim of it, before it rots down into the ground, just becomes soil, it truly creates some good habitat for the rabbits. So that's a pretty cool tip, man. Thank you, Tim Wells. It works too. I've run rabbits out of them many times. I hope y'all enjoyed that. And if you like these sort of things, be sure to log on to exmark.com/backyards. As always, there's a lot of different personalities discussing a lot of different topics. And even as we talk about this particular farm and the habitat and the timber and things like that, you can also see dream yards, which we did a little deep dive into my kind of playground around my house, around my yard, and some of the other things on the farm, some of what you just saw. So be sure to check out all the exmark.com/backyard. A lot of cool stuff.